Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So today is our class on Vedanta and the science of human resources. In fact, I had come to Newcastle yesterday. There was a program here on Gita and Vedanta, Introduction to Gita and Vedanta. It will be a monthly program. The last Friday of every month, I am scheduled to visit Newcastle. So I'm still here. I'm taking this class from Newcastle. And tomorrow morning, I will be returning back to the Vedanta Center. So I thought, why should I skip the class? So I decided to conduct the class from here. So we were discussing the concept of human personality, the real and the apparent man. So in the apparent man, there are two, if you remember, Swami Vivekananda gave a wonderful talk on the real and the apparent man that was delivered in London in 1896. And there he spoke about the apparent man, which is the human personality as we see in Prakriti. He has an ego, he does righteous and unrighteous deeds, he experiences the fruits of his karma depending on his actions, and he tastes the fruits of the karma that he performs. They may be good, they may be bad. We call it sin. In Semitic religions, we call it sin. And the other thing, the opposite of sin, is good deeds, which is supposed to take you to heaven. And also the evil deeds that is supposed to damn you to eternal hell. But according to Vedanta, there is no such thing as eternal heaven or eternal hell. One has to suffer the consequences as soon as the fruits of our actions, of all our past actions, they fructify either in a good way or a bad way. So our hells and our heavens are here. We can make our life a hell if we want, or if our karma deserves it, and we can make the same life a heaven, the same life, the same things that cause us misery will cease to cause us any kind of misery. Though physically we may suffer, but mentally we can avoid the consequences of that misery. How that state is possible? That is the question Vedanta asks. Is that state possible? That irrespective of your prarabdha, our prarabdha karma, which in our physical personality may give rise to pleasure or pain, but is there a deeper reality? Is there a real man within us who can witness all these things, all the changing conditions of our ego and our other personality? Is there a witness self? So that is the question Swamiji asks, and he answers. He says, yes, the real self is not affected. The pure consciousness, the pure Satchidananda, which is the background of all of us, is never impacted by what happens in Prakriti. The witness of all the changing conditions of our ego. Ego is not the witness. Ego is something which is a product of Prakriti. Ahankara, as we all discuss so many times, the five kleshas, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. Raga is attachment to things that we like. Dvesha is hatred for things that we don't like. Abhinivesha is the fear of death or clinging to life. Then we have asmita or ego, the ego sense, which makes all these possible. And there is avidya. So from avidya comes ignorance. We hold on to the apparent man, which is not our true self. And this apparent man, which we think to be the real man, that apparent man causes all the troubles, all the miseries that we suffer is because, not because Prakriti acts upon our personality. The human personality is acted upon by external forces and internal mind, and there are so many aspects of human personality which we have discussed right from the beginning of these sessions. These external aspects, even the internal aspects, mind is nothing but subtle matter. The ego is nothing but subtle matter. It's part of the mind. The four functions of the mind, the ego, ahankara, then we have the reactive mind, manas, then we have buddhi, the highly intelligent or discriminative mind. Everything is included in prakriti, in nature. And identifying with that, unfortunately, gives rise to suffering. So the only way out of suffering, to create a heaven here in the midst of hell. That's why Swamiji jokingly once said, the way to heaven is through hell. There's no other way. We have to pass through hell to reach heaven, if we really want heaven. So the apparent self, which is a result of our deep-rooted ego, causes a lot of problems. And once we give up that ego, which is a very subtle thing, it's not so easy. If we give up the ego, then what will remain? Only the true self. So the luminous self, the Satchidananda, is reflected in the mind and is apparently, not really, limited by our ego. But there is a witness self, which is known as Sakshi, who sees the whole panorama, whole drama. If we can make ourselves a Sakshi, yesterday I was discussing the life of Sri Krishna with reference to his message, the Bhagavad Gita. So what is the message of Bhagavad Gita? We are discussing every alternate Saturday, we discuss the Bhagavad Gita. So to understand the Bhagavad Gita, we have to understand the personality of Sri Krishna. Otherwise, it's very difficult. Because his teachings, he has lived, the message that he has given is based on his real life experience. His whole life is a commentary on what he preached, the message that he gave. We cannot separate the two. So he was like a witness self. The witness self that I'm speaking of, the real, he was established on the Atman, established on the reality that is Brahman. So that is why he was always identified with the real self. So he was just a witness. In fact, so many things happened. The whole war took place before him. All others were disturbed. Either they suffered or some of them were full of joy. There were so ups and downs in everybody, but Sri Krishna was the same. Even before the battle, after the battle, during the battle, he was always established in the Supreme Self. That is why Swami Shardananji says in his comments on the Gita that the message of the second chapter of the Gita, which is the essence of Vedanta, is that once you hold on to the truth that Atman alone abides, Atman alone is true, is our true self, and everything else is apparent. If that conviction comes to our life, we get that conviction somehow by any yoga. In fact, the whole teaching of Bhagavad Gita and Vedanta is to teach us about the real self and not get swayed by the apparent self. So that is the idea. Now, this witness self or Sakshi means witness. It observes all the changes of mind. That's why we can say, we get a hint of what this witness self is in our day-to-day life. How do you say that, oh, today my mind is disturbed? I'm witnessing the changes in the mind. Oh, yesterday it was full of joy. Today I'm full of sorrow. I don't know why. There's a strange kind of sorrow that I'm not in a very good mood. We call it mood, but it is nothing but changing states of mind, depending on whether it is tamas that overpowers us, or rajas or sattva. Rajas gives rise to restlessness, tamas gives rise to inertia, laziness, ignorance. Mind is clouded, we can't think properly. And sattva gives us full of joy, higher joy, the joy that is associated with higher forms of knowledge. It's not the witness self, but the witness self observes the states of sattva, rajas, and tamas. And because it identifies with these three qualities, a permutation and combination of these three qualities, we are never fully sattvic, neither are we fully rajasic, nor are we fully tamas. There is a small proportion of tamas, even now as we are speaking, as we are listening. There's a little bit of tamas, a little of rajas, maybe more of rajas when we are active, or maybe we are very restless to do something. And if we are very quiet, if we are having the patience, and we are established in sattva, then you will find that the person becomes meditative. That is why it is so difficult to listen to talks. One of the training that spirituality gives us is to sit quiet and keep your mind active. We unfortunately don't teach the children. Why children? The parents themselves are restless. You ask somebody to focus on one thought, forget japa and other spiritual practices. That is a very high state if somebody can do it throughout the day. That is not possible. But even to hold on to a train of thought, say studying any subject, constantly focusing on, say, some few verses of the Bhagavad Gita for at least 1 hour. 1 hour is not a very, compared to the 24 hours we have every day, 1 hour is nothing. But even that people find it difficult, because we are in an age where everything moves so fast. So we go on asking this question: can we get these things in a very short time capsule? You see, everything is fast food, everything. People seem to be in a hurry. I don't know where they want to go or what they want to achieve in life. But anyway, everybody seems to be in a hurry, a self-created hurry. So everybody is in a, even when they listen to or when they try to understand the spiritual truths, unfortunately, they want everything very quickly, instant. Just as we have instant food, they want instant spirituality, which is not possible. That is the only thing. You can have any material thing instantly, you can have, but spirituality is something which requires a lot of patience. And patience and perseverance alone will finally survive, because the Atman, or the real self, is infinite in nature, infinite in time, infinite in space. So it cannot be restrained, or it cannot be achieved in a time-bound manner. All one can do is negate the influence of time, space, and causation, which we are trying to do through our sadhana. If we can't think of one thing, at least let us focus on one subject, and at least focus our mind without being restless, sitting in one place. Think about a particular theme for 1 hour. If somebody can do it, then he can definitely meditate and also one day hope to realize the Atman. That is why Sri Krishna gives so much of importance to the 6th chapter, the Dhyana Yoga. First, he describes what are the obstacles for a person to attain to some kind of concentration. When he removes those things, the restlessness, what do you mean by removing those things? Removing the quality of tamas and rajas, minimizing them. We can't totally remove it, making the mind more and more sattvic through prayer, through meditation. These are all preparations for a higher state, the higher state of a sakshi. You just can't become a sakshi. We get carried away by the apparent man. So the mind, the organs, and the whole body, it's in fact, body is also very important. We can't underestimate the impact bad health or a tamasic body creates. Certain kinds of food are responsible for making our mind tamasic, not only the body. Body becomes lazy, but the feeling is conveyed to the mind and mind becomes lazy to think. So there are many aspects of sattva, rajas and tamas, which you will find described in the Gita, the gunas, gunatraya vibhaga yoga. So once we understand the nature of the apparent self, the cause of its restlessness, that is what Gita aims to do. First, it teaches the glory of the self, Atman, the Sakshi Bhava, in the second chapter itself. But before that, there is Vishada Yoga. That is, Vedanta always says, all spiritual quest begins after one is disappointed or one is troubled by the world. It's not a necessary condition, but it is an important condition. That's why the first chapter is full of turmoil and confusion in the mind of Arjuna. That is why he's seeking knowledge. In the second chapter, Sri Krishna gives him the highest knowledge. What is the witness self? What is the sthita prajna? Then Arjuna gets confused. Now, if that state is to be attained, I am nowhere near that state. Then I'll have to give up the battle. So he said, no, don't be in a hurry. You can't just give up the battle. You are full of rajas. You have come here to fight the battle. Continue. Do it in a very slow way, slow manner. And one day you can hope. That's why as he progresses, first he starts with Karma Yoga, then he goes to Dhyana Yoga, prepare the ground for meditation, and then try to meditate, try to focus inward, try to see who is that Sakshi, where is he, who is the witness self, what it is. So the transcendental self or the Atman, which is within, is ever united with the Paramatma, the Ishvara, the controller of this universe. He is not bound by Prakriti. He is in control of the Prakriti. And he should be the object of supreme love and devotion. Since we don't know who he is, we have to know for certain that there is a creator, there is a preserver, there is a destroyer of this Prakriti. But he himself, since he does all these things through his Shakti or through his powers, the powers of Prakriti, he must be somebody who is beyond that. So that transcendental self should be the object of our love and devotion. That's why we have the concept of Ishta Devata. My God whom I worshipped, whichever God I feel like worshipping, I give him a form, I give him some qualities. He may be a historical person or he may be a mythological character. It doesn't really matter as long as you think he is the supreme Brahman, he is the Paramatma. So, truly speaking, he who is within is part of that, or he is one with that Paramatma, but because we do not realize, as the Bible says, this is one of the key verses of the Bible, the kingdom of God is within you. So Jesus also asks us to seek that kingdom of God within. It's not that the God is sitting somewhere in heaven waiting for us, and so that we can continue enjoying the pleasures there. No matter how beautifully in different religions, even in Hinduism, so many pictures are painted of an eternal heaven, which is just a fragment of imagination, because there cannot be eternal heaven. The only heaven or only the kingdom of heaven, if at all there is a kingdom of heaven, it is within the real self. That is what Jesus says, in the spirit alone, not even in the body, not even in the mind. They are all subtle expressions of the same Prakriti, depending on the gunas. So we have to go deep within and find that real man. Now, there is a beautiful imagery in the Mundaka Upanishad. Swamiji was very fond of quoting this Upanishad. The Mundaka Upanishad says, Dva Suparna, Dva means two, Dva Suparna Sayuja Sakhaya Samanam Vriksham Parishasva Jate Tayor Anyaha Pippalam Swadu Atti Anasnaya Anyo Abhichakashiti. What does it mean? It means that there are two birds. These two birds, which represent the Jivatma, the individual soul, and the Supreme Soul, they are inseparable companions. So see the beautiful imagery that Mundaka Upanishad gives. Mundaka Upanishad says, on the tree of life, that is in Prakriti, where we are all compared to birds, ourselves are compared to birds. There are two birds. One is the individual self. They have similar names. One is known as Jivatma, another is known as Paramatma. They dwell in the same tree. Now, what is that tree? The body. The body doesn't mean just the physical body. As I told you, Sharira, there is Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, Karana Sharira. The three levels of bodies. That's why we have named this topic the science of Vedanta and the science of human possibilities. So we are human beings. We have physical possibilities, we have mental possibilities, we have other causal possibilities and spiritual, that is very close to spiritual possibility. So in the same tree of the body, or the what is considered to be the body or the jiva, one bird, this is figurative, you have to remember, this is just an example that is giving, the Rishi is giving. He says, one bird is enjoying the fruits of various tastes. Some are bitter, some are sweet. When it tastes bitter fruit, it feels disgusted. When it tastes sweet fruit, so this sweet and bitter, the pleasure and pain, the cycle of pleasure and pain is going on. But the bird cannot give it up. It goes on eating. And the other bird looks at this bird and it is not eating anything. That means it is not bound by karma. So clinging to the same tree, the individual soul, which is the result of a conditioned ego. Our ego gives us that feeling that I am a separate soul. I am separate from the Paramatma. And I am suffering, I am doing this, I am full of grief, I am full of happiness. Because when I eat the bitter fruit, I am full of misery. When I eat the sweet fruit, I am full of joy. Both are temporary, so one follows the other. Sometimes maybe I get more good fruits, sweet fruits. But someday or the other, I will get some bitter fruits. So he becomes helpless and laments. He doesn't lament when he gets sweet fruits, but it is short-lived, the joy. And he becomes free from grief when he finds the other bird, who is adorable, who is quietly sitting. He is all free. The bird is not neither eating bitter nor it is eating sweet fruits. And he says, oh, they are inseparable. Remember, that is the thing to remember in this verse. Samane vrikshe purusho nimagno sochati nimagnaha nishaya sochati muhyamana justam yada pashyanti anyam ishamasya mahimanam iti vita shokaha. The second verse says, clinging to that same tree, the individual soul, which is the result of the ego, conditioning of the ego, becomes helpless and laments. but he becomes Vita Shoka when he identifies himself with that bird which is not eating bitter or sweet fruits and sees oneself as free and recognizes his own glory. The apparent self recognizes that I was the real self all the time. But because of the stupid ego and all the other things, I considered myself as one who is eating the bitter and sweet fruits. Even to eat the sweet fruits, the ego is necessary. So by eating the sweet fruit for some time, he thinks, oh, I'm very happy. I have all the things in the world. I don't have to worry. But when the same things go away or you feel misery, these things are snatched away, then we feel that same ego goes down or it's bewildered because it feels it is helpless to hold on to the pleasure that it enjoyed a few minutes ago or for a few moments. So it's oscillating between that sweet and bitter, sweet and bitter. And then when it sees the other bird, when the Jivatma becomes one with the Paramatma, it is free from, it becomes Vita Shoka. Shoka means grief. It becomes totally free from grief. Mahimanam iti Vita Shoka. It sees the great glory of that bird. In the beginning, it is so busy with eating the bitter and sweet fruits that it doesn't notice that there is a bird which is very quiet. So that is what happens when we idealize somebody like Sri Ramakrishna, somebody like Krishna, some avatara or some Ishta. What we actually are doing is we are trying to look at that peaceful bird. Now and then we have to meditate on that peaceful bird so that we do not identify ourselves as the bird which is helpless, full of grief. That's the only way to become Vita Shoka, to get rid of grief permanently. So what is the key? What is the key to this path? So one fact which we discussed till now was that apparent man. The apparent man is because we identify ourselves with the psychophysical organism, that is the human body, the mind, and the subtle karmas, karmashaya, the kleshas, the so many aspects of the sukshma sharira also, of which we are totally ignorant. Vedanta says it's not just the body which causes bondage. It is the subtle desires. So much of analysis has been done in yoga, also in other scriptures, the tantras, the yoga, Vedanta, all the scriptures, even other religions, the Bible, they are all discussions on the way of the mind. So somehow, it's not just the body, but also the mind that has to be controlled. Our destiny has to be controlled. Man has to become the master of his own destiny. So, but when we associate with the psychophysical organism of the body-mind complex, you may call it, that man thinks that he is on different levels of existence, different possibilities. When he is very gross, he thinks he is no better than an animal. In fact, he is no better than an animal when he is fully identified with the body. Hunger, thirst, in a routine way, he is just eating to not, it's not, he is not eating just to live. He is as if living only to eat. That is what the animal did. There is a lot of difference between eating to live, just to survive. You know, but there is another way where we think we are living only to eat varieties of food. That is what even animals do. So, beginning with that, he tries to raise himself, raise the level at which he is existing. That is the first step. Once he raises the level, goes higher and higher, there is in Western psychology, there is a beautiful concept which is known as hierarchy of needs. Hierarchy. There is a triangle. One famous psychologist, he tried, who succeeded Freud. Of course, it's not the first generation of psychology. Is, I forgot his name. The psychologist who created this beautiful concept of hierarchy of needs. He drew a triangle. On the base of the triangle, Abraham Maslow. Yes, Abraham Maslow, he created a beautiful theory that there is a hierarchy of needs. Because psychology, though they have very little knowledge of Vedanta, but they have come to this conclusion after observing human behavior. Why do some people behave in a particular way? Why do some people behave in a very noble way? So the explanation that he gave, because they do not accept the Atman or the existence of any spirit, which for them is not of much consequence, because they just see the states of mind. They try to control the states of mind without knowing what motivates them. But they understand the phenomena in the right way. That's why he says Abraham Maslow created a concept which explained why people are behaving in different ways. He says there is a hierarchy of needs. So once you are at the bottom of the triangle, bottom of that pyramid, they are first concerned about their livelihood, food. But once you have abundance of food, once that need is settled, he is talking in a very, you may say, in a very practical, pragmatic way. Once that is satisfied, once a person has enough to eat, enough to live, he has his basic needs satisfied, then he will not be satisfied at the base of the pyramid. He goes slightly higher. Then there is mental satisfaction. Then he goes to higher satisfaction. He wants some kind of art or fine art. He says, now I have enough intellectual capacity, but still I'm not happy. I've acquired a lot of knowledge, I've made a lot of money, but still some dissatisfaction remains. So he goes higher he goes, the greater is his, highly refined is his taste. Then he wants to enjoy abstract things like a piece of art, piece of music, and maybe a piece of literature, a masterpiece of literature. So we say he's a man of a refined taste. Why do we say? Because the hierarchy of needs have changed. And when he comes to the top, which Abraham Maslow, in his own language of psychology, says self-actualization. Actually, he has definitely tried to explain what this self-actualization is. So there are other philosophers, existentialists, that they say that the existential problems still exist. Even the most mature painter or artist or a highly accomplished scientist, everybody, that there is a fear lurking in them, the fear of existence. What will happen to all these things, the noble things that I've done when I die? So that fear doesn't go. So we saw in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, when we discussed Raj Yoga last time, Swarasavahi Vidushopi, even a learned person, he has this klesha of the fear of death or clinging to life. No matter how intelligent or how evolved a human being is, that fear of death never goes. That is why Nachiketa goes to Yama and I don't want, he tempts him by offering him kingdoms and wealth and all the enjoyable things. He said, you please keep it, because he has climbed to the highest ladder, the self-actualization of the existential problems which continue to plague him. So he wants higher and higher satisfaction. That is what is meant by hierarchy. Our needs change. It is very natural that our needs keep on changing. That is how we evolve. If you are satisfied with the lowest rung of the hierarchy, of needs, that is food, then we will not evolve. But you see, people are not happy. They want something higher, something higher. Some, of course, they do not know what they actually are seeking. That is the problem. That is why they run after many things. But that hierarchy of needs continues in a human being. So till this bird, which is eating bitter and sweet fruits, it goes, jumps from branch to branch, and then on the top of the branch, top of the tree, he finds another bird who has been watching him, observing him, and that is the witness self. So when he is going up the ladder of hierarchy, he can turn to the spiritual self within. He can also go down, still down to the gross physical body. So it is, the choice is his. What do we want to attain in life? Do we want to go up the ladder, or do we want, nobody can force us to go up the ladder. We can choose to go down. We can turn to the gross physical body, or the more he recognizes himself that there is a higher self, it sees the bird on the top of the tree as pure, free, immortal spirit. The higher he rises in scale of life, he attains more and more wisdom, more and more strength, more and more freedom. Freedom is a key word here. You see, it is that desire, innate desire for freedom. Why did our rishis find that moksha is the goal of life? There can be other goals of life, but they said no, joy is not the goal of life. Freedom, and from freedom comes bliss. Bliss is not joy, remember. There is some joy in bondage also. When you are eating something, you see how animals enjoy when they catch hold of a prey and eat the flesh. So we find these things existing, some small joys existing in many of the lower things. But still, man aspires for freedom, that thirst for freedom. He wants to be free from the problems of poverty. That is why he earns more money. He thinks the more money he earns, the more free he will be. Then he finds money is not enough for total freedom. He should be free from disease. So he starts thinking of worrying about disease, about treatment, about making sure that if he falls sick, he can go to some doctor and get himself cured. He has the enough money, security to. So then he finds there are so many other things: the fear of falling sick, the fear of uh, uh, losing name and fame, somebody criticizing justly or unjustly. So he's trying very hard to keep up that. The fear of losing many things, not only just money, but so many things: prestige, power, glory, all those things he doesn't want to lose. So he knows he wants to be free from all the limitations. But where to get true freedom? What is true freedom? What is true moksha? That can be known only by a person who has identified with the spirit. The more he recognizes himself that the Nitya Mukta, the beautiful word, eternally free, immortal spirit, Nitya Mukta, Jiva, there are different Jivas, Sri Ramakrishna beautifully explains. Some are eternally bound, like the fish who are caught in the net. They don't want to escape, they don't even try. They think they are safe, they are swimming as long as the net is not pulled on the surface, they still are very happy inside the net. So they are Baddha Jiva. Then Thakur says there are other levels of people, different levels of freedom. Some people understand that they are now going to be, the fish try to jump, they struggle, but they cannot come out. Others, they struggle very hard and manage to jump out of the net, escape the bondage, but they have to struggle a lot. Whereas there are some who are so wise, they go so deep that the net does not reach them. They are, Thakur has called them as Nitya Mukta Jiva. So that Nitya Mukta, immortal spirit, that bird which is sitting on the top of the tree, not bothering about eating sweet and bitter fruits, So the more he raises himself in the hierarchy of needs, he attains more and more wisdom, more and more strength, more and more freedom. And as a result, he gets more and more peace and joy. So this self-awareness, this awareness or the Sakshi Bhav is key to our success in life, real success in life. Not just material success, but real success, which gives us self-confidence, faith in ourselves, faith in God, self-respect. We don't depend on others. We don't want artificial labels. We don't want people to give us labels. Oh, he's so and so. Because he's having such a post, he's great. We are happy because whatever we do, we are the Supreme Self. Nobody can take that freedom away from us. So what we do in the world, it's really immaterial because that is transitory. So that's why Swami Vivekananda says that Gita is a great book. Bless that book. Because he says, why do great things? Why not do small things? Because both are equally unreal. That's why he says, bless that great book. The idea of karma yoga, of not bothering what the fruits are of your actions. Whatever actions you do, big or small, nothing is trivial. So that self-respect which comes out of faith that I am my Ishta or the God that I'm worshipping, the self or the Paramatma that I'm worshipping is my highest reward. The freedom is my highest reward. And the more closer I am to that reality, I am great. So that one measures one's greatness depending on how much free he is. So a free person will have more self-respect. He respects himself because he is free. He is not bound. Holy Mother used to say very often that when many people used to force some of the widows to remarry or some young girls who wanted to just be free because they had seen enough of bondage in the world. So the mothers would force, why don't you marry her off and all those things. He said, why should I? She is already free. Why should I make them bound? So that freedom is something which is valued by everybody. It's not just the householder. Even the householder wants to be free. It's not just the monks who are aspiring for mukti. Everybody wants mukti. He wants freedom in a different way, but everybody wants freedom. He wants to be free from grief. He wants to be free from wants. He wants to be free from uh, the ideas of, he wants to depend on less and less people. That is how we gain self-confidence, self-respect, and self-mastery. They are all connected to each other. This parable, I mean, not this parable, this beautiful example in the Mundaka Upanishad is given to show that where does this true self-respect lie? The bird below or the bird on the top? The bird on the top, because of its desire to be free, it has the highest respect, and the bird below always looks at that bird above. Though it is part of that bird only, it becomes one. They are connected to each other. The Jivatma is always real, the apparent self is always connected to the real self. It cannot be separated. But apparently, because of the ego, it gets a feeling that I am the apparent self, I am sorry, I am sad, I am suffering, and all those things. So when man tries to control or fails to control the mind, the organs, the body, particularly because he does not recognize that true self, that real self, who is the master, he thinks he is a slave. So a slave can never be happy. Swamiji says he who is the master of his own self, which is the greatest mastery. We try to master other people, but still we feel threatened. They say somebody, a boss will feel that he should be empowered enough to control his subordinates, but he has his own boss. He is afraid of that boss. That boss. So also, even the emperor feels that he is under the power of somebody. Finally, it comes to the ruler of Prakriti, the Shakti, the creator of the universe. We feel that we are much, our power is nothing compared to the highest authority in this, on the surface of this planet, will fall short of the creator who is controlling the whole universe. So when he looks at that great capacity of that creator, he feels he's a puny little creature. With all his ego, with all his achievements in this world, he still feels that there are many things which he cannot control. He cannot control death, he cannot control life, he cannot control how long he will live, nothing. So the self becomes identified with the not self. The apparent self becomes identified, the real self becomes identified with the apparent self, and it apparently, not really, it seems to lose control of one's own life. We feel that we are losing control of our own lives. That is why we try to search for God, search for a higher power who can solve our problems, who can give us some kind of self-control and help us to uh, realize our true self. So what happens is that we have to remember one thing. The essence and substance of today's discussion is that we have to remember that we start from the gross upwards to the subtle. Body is just a vehicle, like a chariot. The horses, as we see the beautiful imagery given, the Bhagavad Gita itself, Arjuna is the person, Jivatma. The charioteer is like the Buddhi. He controls our destiny. The horses will go helter-skelter if there is nobody to control. The reins are like the mind, and the horses are like the organs. So where the vehicle will finally go depends a lot on our buddhi. That is the whole point of discussion. We have to catch hold of the buddhi, because the buddhi is that aspect of the mind which is most luminous. It's not the manas. The mind is very, very gross. It can be dark, it can be full of depression, it can be full of joy sometimes, but it goes up and down in waves. We have no control over our thoughts. But the sharp buddhi, the essence of the Gayatri Mantra, because that Gayatri Mantra is supposed to be the essence of the Vedas. As Thakur said, Gayatri Mantra says, Dhiyo yona prachodayata. Please illuminate my dhi or my buddhi so that I can see clearly. Now everything is dark, everything is confused. Please illumine my mind by developing my buddhi, which is the higher aspect of the mind. So man can traverse the path of darkness, the path of freedom, you can say, path towards freedom, according to the way he directs. If he has a very strong driver, a very wonderful buddhi, and a charioteer, or one who very strong reins, the mind is like the reins holding the horses. So everything should be perfect. The horses may be good, we may have all the sense organs may be very powerful, very intelligent, very we can understand things very fast, we can do multitasking. The horses are very good, the best horses we may have, but if the reins are weak, they are likely to snap. A weak mind cannot control a strong body. A strong body with a strong mind is necessary for spiritual life. So then only we can run the chariot of our world. So whether we want our journey to go in the right direction and reach the goal or not is in our hands. So we have to remember that this body is not just a prison house to in which we are bound. The moment we say we are the body, we are imprisoning ourselves. We self-confine ourselves, thinking, oh, I have a weak body. I can't do this, I can't do that. No doubt the body is weak, it tries to pull down the mind. But One has to raise oneself by one's own self, means one by one's own mind. That is the central teaching of Vedanta or Gita. The mind has the capacity to rise above the body. So, if instead of constantly harping on the idea that my body is a prison, I am this, I am that, I have so many problems, for a moment, in the periods when you meditate, Swamiji says that is the only time when you are free from the bondage of the body, because you are meditating on the spirit within, the buddhi within, the light within. That is how we are taught to, everybody is taught to meditate. At that time, Swamiji says, you lose the touch of, if you lose the touch of the material. That's the only time in your life, Swamiji says, he praises meditation. He said the meditative state is the highest, because at that time, it is the only time in your, throughout the day or maybe throughout your life, where you are not in touch with the anything material. You feel, that's why after meditation you get a very light feeling. So that is what Swamiji says, ki meditation is the highest state. So try to meditate every day. There are many preparations to bring the mind to the state of meditation that we desire. So japa is one, repeating the name. There are so many techniques. So each of these techniques teaches you to be free from the prison house of matter, not just our body, our circumstances, many things. So that is how Vedanta describes it. So now we will come. There are some questions I see. A lot of questions are there. So I'll try to answer. We are running short of time. Yeah. Are Atman, Karana, Sharira, Karma, Shreya, all Karma, Shaya, all equivalent terms, or is there subtle difference? There is a huge difference. Karana Sharira is, yeah, you can compare Karana Sharira with the Karma Shaya. Yesterday, if you have attended, please try to refer to my previous talk on Thursday on Raj Yoga. There I have clearly described what is our samskara, the difference between samskara and karmashaya. Karmashaya is the latent, samskara are the latent impressions. They are known as inherent tendencies. So immediately what we do today or tomorrow or day after tomorrow, that will depend on our, not on our karmashaya, because they are dormant, very dormant. But these latent impressions, these samskaras are immediately, they manifest themselves. So the Karana Sharira is where your karma shaya. So Karana Sharira very rarely comes into picture, though it comes into picture, but it normally manifests according to Patanjali in the next life, in our subsequent lives, because they are too much fossilized, deep within our consciousness. They do not manifest in this life, not immediately at least. Maybe in a distant future they will manifest. But Patanjali says, so there is a difference between the Karana Sharira, the Karma Shaya, which is part of the Karana Sharira, and definitely Atman. Atman has nothing to do with any of the Shariras. All the Shariras, Karana Sharira, Karma Shaya, or Mana, Indriya, and all those things, gross or subtle, they are all material, but they are all parts of Prakriti. And Atman is not Prakriti. Atman is independent. It's the Sakshi, it is the witness. It gives luminosity to Prakriti. And we get a feeling that it is the light of Atman which is reflected in, not feeling, we see that the light of Atman is reflected. It's not just the physical light, but what I'm saying is that consciousness reflects itself in the gross and the subtle, our Karana Sharira, the Karma Shaya, everything is connected with that consciousness, but at the same time that consciousness is separate. So there is a huge difference. Not only subtle, they're totally opposite in their function. Atman cannot be compared, the Apparent man and the real man are totally two different existences, two parallel. Sankhya calls them Purusha and Prakriti. How can the two be together? They are not the same. So there's one more question. I have heard if chant Sanskrit shlokas and verses including Gayatri mantra and songs incorrectly pronounced may be harmful, especially to those who do not know the language. I think it is more important for those who know the language to pronounce it correctly. The sound symbols, they have some therapeutic value, but if one is sure about the meaning, then it really doesn't matter. But I'm not talking of Gayatri, but generally Sanskrit language is a very phonetic language. One has to be precise for it to have some influence on our life in a gross way, of course, and even in some subtle way. But more than that, the sounds which are known as bija mantras in Tantra, they have discovered subtle sounds. They're not just sounds. They are like seeds. Bija means seed. So those seeds have tremendous power inherent in them. So that wrong pronunciation of the bija is more important than other Sanskrit sounds. Other sounds are important, but not as important as the bijas, because bijas are revealed sounds. Apparently, they don't have any meaning. They have some significance. They're not some significance. They have a tremendous significance because they can, it is like our consciousness is condensed in these seeds. Like a whole tree is condensed in this seed. A small banyan seed, if you see, it's a very small seed. When you plant it, you don't even realize it is such a big tree. So also Lord, the whole of consciousness, according to Tantra, is focused or condensed, and it becomes a pinpoint, that bija. And there is a bindu. Every bija ends with a bindu, a point. So that reciting that bija mantra, that bija, is very important. The whole mantra is definitely important because it is connected with the bija. But general Sanskrit verses, if we pronounce wrongly, say Gita, for example, we chant the Gita many times, there may be mistakes. In fact, different cultures or different states in India itself, they pronounce in different ways. Though there is a Sanskrit pronunciation which has to be perfect. Sanskrit is one of the most phonetic of all languages. So it has to be pronounced the way Sanskrit is pronounced. But when those Sanskrit words are taken in different languages, Indian languages, their pronunciation changes. So the word may be Sanskrit, but a Bengali person will pronounce in a different way, a Gujarati person, because Gujarati is also based on Sanskrit. A Malayalam will pronounce in a different way. That doesn't change the idea of that mantra, idea of that verse, that Sanskrit shloka. So for shloka, it doesn't really matter, because if a person who belongs to a particular vernacular language, he has a different way of pronouncing the same thing, which another person belonging to another geographical location. But if we go to the pure Sanskrit, there is a science known as Siksha. Siksha is not education. Siksha is a Vedic science which is known as the science of phonetics. It is phonetics, not science. It's how to pronounce. So there are different parts of the mouth, the sound reproduction which is done. How should it be pronounced? Everything is taught in Siksha. In fact, they are the 6 sciences which you have to master before learning the Vedas. You see, all our learning, traditional learning in India in the ancient times was all oral. So if you want to learn the Vedas, first they'll say you learn the Shikshas. Shiksha, one of the thing is Vyakarana, grammar. First you learn Vedic grammar, then you learn Shiksha, which is the science of pronunciation, how to pronounce different alphabets. And then when you do everything, then you come to the guru or the teacher, the Gurukula, and then he will teach you the Vedas. Not by referring to books. Books is a very inferior way of learning things. In our ancient tradition, they say you have to memorize. There is no other way. All the four Vedas, sometimes they had to memorize. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, grammar, everything. Because memory is something helps us to internalize the knowledge. What you remember, what is part of your memory, is part of your psyche, it's part of your personality. You can't separate it. But if you restrict your knowledge to books, to reading, then you may feel the knowledge is there in the books, I'll refer to it later on. And then you forget about it. Every time you need to refer something, either you go to open the book. Nowadays, the books are replaced by Google. So you just go, sometimes you can even ask Google. Google will give you the answers. But very often they are ineffective because we do not know. Those things are not in our mind. They may be in our mobile, they may be in the books, but that knowledge is not part of us. Whereas the ancient system was based on oral tradition. So whether you know the meaning or not, the Gayatri Mantra was recited first. Then slowly the meaning dawned upon you. Now the opposite thing we are doing, we first trying to understand the meaning, then we go to the original verse. No, sound played a very important part. So that way it is very important. As you said, it may not be very harmful, but it will not be effective. So I hope you're satisfied with the answer. So I'll take your leave now. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. So we'll have the gospel. No, next to tomorrow is, I think, the Great Master. So that is alternate Sunday class. We'll have the class tomorrow morning. I'll be flying back to Bornand. I mean, going back to our center. So our class will be on as per schedule.